The sky was painted in orange and purple as the sun gently dipped behind New York's tall, shining towers. The city buzzed as always, but high above the noise on the 45th floor of a luxury rooftop restaurant, everything felt still. Inside, the air smelled of roasted duck, red wine, and expensive perfume. Soft jazz music floated through the room like a lullaby for the wealthy. Couples laughed. Waiters moved like dancers, graceful and silent. At the corner table, next to the giant glass window, sat Mr. Benjamin Grant, age 42. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't talking. He wasn't even eating. He was just there. Wearing a perfectly fitted navy blue suit and a black silk tie, Benjamin looked like the cover of a business magazine. His watch alone could buy a house. His shoes were polished like mirrors. His phone, lying silent on the table, had 20 missed calls, most from people begging for meetings, partnerships, or just 5 minutes of his time. But Benjamin didn't care. He swirled the wine in his glass but didn't sip it. His eyes weren't on the menu or the city lights. They were lost in thought. He had everything: a billion-dollar company, properties in 5 countries, a private jet, and a face known across the business world. Yet tonight he felt empty, as if success had robbed him of something real, something human. He remembered the days he worked late in a small garage, building apps, dreaming big. Back then, he had fire in his soul. Now everything felt cold. A waiter approached with a bright smile. "Mr. Grant, the chef recommends the lobster tonight." "I'm not hungry," Benjamin said softly. The waiter nodded and backed away. Whispers followed Benjamin wherever he went. People pointed at him, mouths open. "That's him," a woman whispered. "The tech genius. The guy who bought out 3 companies in a single week." A man took a quick picture of him, pretending to snap the city view. Benjamin noticed, but didn't react. He was used to being stared at like a painting in a museum. Everyone admired him, but no one really knew him. Then it happened. The restaurant doors opened, and 3 small figures stepped in. They didn't belong there, and everyone knew it. 3 young boys around 9 or 10 years old stood just inside the entrance. Their skin was sun-touched, their hair uncombed, their shoes worn out. One of them had holes in his sweater. The other had a Band-Aid on his cheek. They looked around with wide eyes, frightened, unsure, but determined. Gasps echoed across the room. One woman laughed. "Is this a prank?" A man muttered, "Where are their parents?" Another snorted, "Are they here to steal something?" A tall, blonde waitress rushed toward them with fake concern. "Boys, you can't be here," she said sharply. "This is a private place." The tallest boy, maybe 10, held something in his trembling hands. A small white envelope, folded neatly. His fingers were dirty, but he gripped it like it was gold. We just need a minute," he whispered. "You need to leave," the waitress said louder. Benjamin turned slightly. He hadn't been paying attention, but something about the boys' voices pulled him in like a string tugging at his heart. The boys looked around again, and finally the middle one pointed at Benjamin's table. "Him! We need to talk to him." The waitress laughed awkwardly. "Mr. Grant, you must be mistaken." But they were already moving. With quiet footsteps and brave hearts, the boys walked straight through the sea of judgmental eyes, past the marble tables and silver forks, toward Benjamin Grant, the man everyone feared or worshipped. Benjamin looked up. 3 pairs of innocent, trembling eyes met his. Time paused. He felt a strange tug in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't fear. It wasn't curiosity. It was something deeper. The tallest boy stepped forward. His lower lip shook, but he held the envelope up like a soldier offering a message in battle. "Sir, this is for you," he said, voice soft but firm. Benjamin blinked. "For me?" The boy nodded. For a second, no one breathed. Waiters stood frozen. Customers leaned closer. Phones were lifted secretly, recording the strange moment between power and poverty. Benjamin slowly reached out, his fingers brushing the edge of the letter. His hands, used to holding contracts and checks worth millions, now touched a fragile, crumpled envelope that carried something far more important. He took the letter. The boys didn't speak. They just stood there, Three shadows of courage in a world that never gave them space. Benjamin looked at the envelope. His name was written on it, in a shaky, handwritten script. No return address, no logo, just to Mr. Benjamin Grant. Something deep inside him stirred. He hadn't even opened it yet, but already his world had started to change. He looked up at the boys once more, and in their eyes, he saw something familiar, something haunting, something that felt like fate had just walked through the door. The tallest boy, still trembling, gently placed the small, crumpled envelope on the white tablecloth. His eyes were wide but steady. His tiny chest rose and fell, like a storm was trapped inside him. "Sir, this is for you," he whispered again, his voice fragile, as if it might shatter if he spoke any louder. Benjamin's brow furrowed. His world was one of polished marble, million-dollar deals and press conferences, not mysterious letters from strangers. "For me?" he repeated almost to himself. The boys nodded in unison and took a step back. Their movements were small, careful, like they were afraid someone would grab them and throw them out. All around the restaurant, forks paused in midair. Conversations stopped. Some diners were already filming the strange scene with their phones, eyes wide with curiosity. Benjamin glanced at the envelope. It looked out of place on the elegant table, creased, worn, slightly stained. His name was written on it in shaky handwriting, to Mr. Benjamin Grant. No fancy seal, no corporate stamp, just ink and pain. He picked it up. For a moment, he hesitated. His fingers, always so confident when signing billion-dollar deals, now trembled. Slowly, carefully, he opened the envelope. He unfolded the paper inside. It was a single page, handwritten, and the first line was like a bullet to the chest. "Dear Dad, I think you forgot us." Benjamin's breath caught in his throat. His eyes froze on the words. His heart, a machine trained for numbers and profits, skipped a beat. The room faded. The sound of clinking glasses and whispered gossip vanished. The world outside the window disappeared. All he could see were those words, haunting, raw, human. He continued reading. The letter was signed by Rachel Carter, a name from the past, a name he hadn't heard in over a decade. She wrote that they had met 11 years ago, back when he was still climbing the ladder, when he wasn't rich, when he was just Ben. They'd shared 3 months of something beautiful, nights filled with hope, laughter, long walks, and whispered dreams. Then life moved on. He moved on. But she hadn't told him everything. She never told him she was pregnant, not because she was cruel, because she didn't want to trap him, because she knew he had dreams too big for a small apartment and a baby. Benjamin's fingers dug into the paper. His eyes raced across every line like he was chasing time he could never get back. Rachel's words were soft, but they carried weight. "I don't want your money. I'm not asking for help. I'm dying. The cancer is everywhere now. I just want the boys to meet their father before it's too late. Even if you never call, at least they'll know they tried." His chest burned. His throat ached. His entire life, every award, every headline, every million-dollar smile, felt like dust. He looked up and saw them. 3 small boys, 3 little strangers, but not strangers at all. He stared into the face of the smallest one, the boy with quiet eyes and messy hair. Those eyes, blue-gray, just like his, a rare color, cold as steel, warm as dawn. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected the pieces of himself he never knew existed. The boy blinked slowly. Benjamin's voice cracked. How old are you?" The tallest one cleared his throat. "I'm 10. He's 9. The little one just turned 7. 7. 11 years ago, Rachel." The math hit him like a punch. These were his sons, his blood, his legacy, and he never even knew their names. He leaned back in his chair, suddenly dizzy. The ceiling spun. The people watching blurred. His breath came in short, sharp bursts. All this time, while he was traveling the world, making speeches, building towers, they were growing up without him, without knowing who their father was, without his voice, his hugs, his help with homework, without his protection. He imagined them walking to school alone, missing birthdays without a dad, crying when their mother coughed too hard, holding each other in the dark when bills couldn't be paid. And now, she was dying. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. Not the kind you wipe away in secret, the kind that break you, the kind that tear down everything you thought you were. He stood up slowly. His napkin dropped to the floor like a white flag. Silence fell over the entire restaurant. The boys flinched, afraid he might yell, afraid he might send them away. But Benjamin did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee so he could look them in the eyes, eye to eye. He reached out his hand, not to shake, but to touch, to feel, to connect. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know about you. If I had known. His voice broke. He looked at the letter again, then at the boys. And for the first time in years, Benjamin Grant cried. Not for his lost time, not for his shattered image, but for the three pieces of his soul that had found him in a restaurant he never thought would change his life. The smallest boy stepped forward. His voice was just a whisper. It's okay, Dad. We found you. Benjamin's voice was quiet but urgent. Where is your mother? The smallest boy sniffled and wiped his tears with the back of his hand. In the hospital, he said. She's very sick now. She doesn't talk much anymore. His voice trailed off, heavy with pain no child should carry. Benjamin stood up so fast his chair fell backward with a loud thud. The restaurant grew even quieter. He looked down at the boys. Come with me, he said gently. They hesitated. The waitress from earlier tried to step in. Sir, are you sure? These boys. But Benjamin didn't even look at her. He reached for the hands of the two smallest ones and nodded to the eldest. You're with me now. They took his hands like lifelines and walked with him, out of the restaurant, out of the whispers, out of the world that had judged them before hearing a single word. But not everyone stayed quiet. A man in a black blazer sneered loudly. They're probably lying. Just little street scammers. Another one, an older man sipping wine, chuckled darkly. That millionaire's gonna get played. Bet they're not even his kids. Look at their skin. Benjamin stopped. He turned around slowly. The room froze. Every eye was on him. He looked directly at the man who had laughed. His voice was low and steady. They are with me, he said, and they belong here more than any of you. The silence that followed was louder than any shout. Without another word, Benjamin turned back and walked out, his hands still holding tightly onto the children who had just changed his life. Outside, his luxury car waited, a sleek black vehicle polished to shine, always driven by a quiet man in a suit. But tonight, Benjamin opened the door himself. He didn't wait for the driver. He didn't act like a CEO. He acted like a father who had just found pieces of his soul. They got in. The car was warm inside, but the boys huddled close together anyway. Benjamin looked at them. Tell me everything, he said. The eldest boy, his name was Micah, began to speak, and every word hit Benjamin like a storm of regret. Mom worked 2 jobs, Micah said. She cleaned houses in the morning and worked at a diner at night. We barely saw her, but she always smiled. She was tired, but she always smiled for us. Benjamin swallowed hard. She told us about you, the middle boy Aaron added. She said you were smart, brave, that you didn't know about us, but that one day you'd come. She never hated you, Micah said. Even when she got sick, she said you had a kind heart. She believed that. Benjamin blinked away the tears forming again. And people, Aaron looked down. They said we didn't look like anyone, that we didn't belong anywhere. We're not white enough for some, not black enough for others. Micah nodded slowly. Kids at school called us names, he said. Some grown-ups too. They looked at Mom weird when we went places. Once a lady told her she was a mistake for raising half kids. Benjamin clenched his jaw. Rage boiled inside him, but he didn't speak. He listened, because for once it wasn't his turn to talk. The smallest boy, Eli, finally spoke up again. His voice was soft, sleepy, but brave. Mom said skin is just wrapping paper, he said, but the heart tells the real story. Benjamin's throat closed. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. 11 years. 11 years he had missed. 11 birthdays, 11 Christmases, 11 nights Rachel had probably cried while tucking them into bed, whispering stories of a father they'd never met. And now she was in a hospital, alone, dying, all while raising three boys strong enough to walk into a restaurant full of strangers just to find the man she believed still had a heart. "Why now?" Benjamin finally asked. His voice cracked. Micah pulled out another letter. "She wrote this too," he said. "She said if anything happened to her, we had to find you. That's why we were looking for you for days. She didn't want to die before you saw us." Benjamin opened the second note. It was shorter, written shakier. "Ben, if this letter reaches you, it means my time is almost over. I just wanted you to see them once. Not because you owe me anything, but because they deserve to know who they came from. And you deserve to know what love really looks like." Benjamin stared at the words. His entire chest ached. In his mind, he saw Rachel, young, laughing, holding his hand under the stars all those years ago. He had loved her once. He just didn't know she had given him a forever gift. He turned to the boys. "I need to see her," he said. "Right now." The driver glanced back through the mirror. Benjamin gave him the address the boys recited, a tiny hospital in Queens. Not fancy, not well-funded, just a place where the strongest woman he never deserved was fighting to hold on. As the car sped toward the hospital, Benjamin looked again at the boys, and something in his heart shifted. Not just guilt, not just shock. Love. Real. Raw. Unshakable. He wasn't thinking like a CEO anymore. He was thinking like a man who had just been handed a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. Not this time. The black car pulled up outside the small hospital. It wasn't a fancy place. No red carpets, no marble floors, just gray walls and tired lights that blinked in the hallway. But inside, love was waiting. Benjamin stepped out, his expensive shoes clicking against the wet pavement. The boys followed him quietly. Eli held Benjamin's hand like he'd done it forever. A nurse at the front desk looked surprised when she saw the billionaire CEO walk in with three small boys. "We're here to see Rachel Carter," Benjamin said, his voice low. The nurse looked at the boys, then back at him. "She's in room 209. But sir, she's not doing well. She might not have much time left." Benjamin's heart dropped. He nodded quickly. "Take me to her, please." They walked down the hallway. Every second felt like a lifetime. Benjamin's hands were cold. His thoughts were racing. What if she hates me? What if I'm too late? They reached the door. Micah opened it slowly. Rachel lay on the bed. Thin, pale, so different from the woman Benjamin remembered. Her skin was dull. Her hair had fallen out in patches. But when she turned her head and saw them, her whole face changed. Her eyes, though tired, lit up like stars. "Ben!" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Benjamin froze. The boy stood at the foot of the bed, but Rachel only had eyes for him. He walked in slowly. His chest felt like it would explode. "I didn't know," he said. "Rachel, I didn't know. I never knew." He dropped to his knees beside her bed. He took her frail hand in his. Tears spilled down his cheeks, hot and heavy. "I'm so sorry." Rachel smiled weakly. "I know," she whispered. "I know you didn't. But they need you now. They always needed you. And I believe you're ready." Benjamin placed her hand against his cheek. "You raised them so well," he said, choking on his tears. I don't deserve them." She gave a tiny laugh. "No one ever does. That's the secret about love. We never truly earn it. We just get lucky to be trusted with it." The boys came closer. Rachel reached out with shaking arms and pulled them into a hug. "You found him," she whispered to them. "You were so brave." Micah nodded, tears falling. Aaron sniffled. "Don't go, Mama." Rachel smiled. "I'll always be with you," she whispered. Benjamin couldn't take it. He pressed his forehead to her hand. "I'll take care of them," he said. "I promise, with everything I am." Rachel looked into his eyes one last time. "I believe you," she whispered. "You have their hearts now." That night she slept peacefully. 2 days later, she was gone. She passed away in her sleep, surrounded by love. No machines, no loud beeping, just quiet breathing, and three sons who had never stopped hoping. Benjamin never left the hospital, not for a single hour. He slept in a chair by their side. He bought food from the hospital cafeteria. He told bedtime stories using his phone flashlight. He wasn't a billionaire anymore. He was just dad. When Rachel was gone, the nurses offered to call child services. Benjamin stood up tall. "No," he said firmly. "They're coming home with me." He signed every paper. Took legal steps that same day. Hired lawyers to secure custody, but made sure no headlines leaked. This was not about business. This was about family. That night, before leaving the hospital, he took the boys to Rachel's room one last time. They each kissed her forehead. Aaron whispered, "We'll be okay, Mama. Daddy's here now." Micah nodded, holding his brothers tight. Eli placed a paper heart he'd made on her pillow. And Benjamin, he stood there longer than anyone. "I miss so much," he said to her still body, "but I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." They left quietly. No cameras, no news. Just love walking out of a hospital in the arms of new beginnings. As they drove home, Benjamin looked at the skyline of the city he once ruled. It didn't feel cold anymore. It felt like a promise, a fresh start. Taking the boys home to his penthouse was supposed to be the easy part, but it was only the beginning. The world Benjamin once ruled with confidence had now turned its cold eyes on him. The first attack came silently, from whispers in elite circles. "He's lost it," said one board member at a company meeting. "Why adopt street kids?" "It's bad for the brand," said another. One woman at a fundraiser leaned over her wine glass and said loudly, "It's just a phase. He'll donate them like he donates buildings." Benjamin heard it all, and for the first time, he didn't just ignore it. He felt it burn, but not for himself, for his boys, for Eli, who stared in awe at the tall buildings from the back seat of the Rolls-Royce, for Aaron, who brought his mother's photo to his first night in the penthouse, for Micah, who whispered, "Do we really live here now?" as he touched the smooth walls. Benjamin smiled through his pain. "Yes, this is your home now." He made them pancakes on the first morning, though he nearly burned the kitchen. He sat with them and helped with homework, even when he didn't understand fourth-grade math. He read bedtime stories, even the ones with silly voices. But the outside world, it was cruel. Reporters followed them to school. Paparazzi tried to photograph the boys in the playground. One newspaper ran the headline, "Billionaire CEO adopts mystery kids, marketing or mistake." Benjamin's face was on every magazine, and yet it wasn't the headlines that cut deepest. It was the silence. Parents pulled their children from class. Some teachers grew distant. At one birthday party, Aaron wasn't invited. When Benjamin called to ask why, the mom said, "I don't think it's a good fit." Benjamin clenched the phone, rage rising in his chest. Not good enough? Because they were biracial? Because they were poor once? Because their mother died in a hospital and not in a mansion? That night, he sat with his boys on the rooftop. The sky above was dark, the city alive with noise. Eli sat close, his small hands folded. "Daddy," he whispered, "why do people hate us?" Benjamin took a deep breath. His voice shook. "Because sometimes people don't understand love. They only understand labels. But we are going to change that." The next day, Benjamin made a choice. He walked into his company's boardroom, wearing no tie, no suit, just jeans and a white shirt, and he spoke. He told the story of Rachel, of how she raised three boys on love and strength, of how the world judged her for being poor and biracial, but never saw her soul, of how she left behind not just children, but hope. "I'm not ashamed," he said, his voice firm. "I'm proud to be their father." There was silence. Some board members shifted uncomfortably. But Benjamin didn't stop there. He launched the Rachel Carter Foundation. Its mission? To protect, support, and uplift children from broken homes. He gave scholarships to underprivileged kids, especially biracial and minority children. He hired single mothers and trained them for tech careers. He built learning centers in the poorest neighborhoods. And he told the world why. Every interview, every speech, he spoke of Rachel, of how she never gave up. of how three little boys walked into a restaurant and changed his life forever. The media had a choice: judge him or join him. Slowly, things shifted. People who once laughed began to listen. A famous actress donated $1 million. A senator quoted his speech on national TV. And one mother, whose son was bullied, wrote, "Thank you, Mr. Grant. You're giving my child hope." At home, things changed too. The boys laughed more. Micah made friends. Eli brought home an art project where he drew his family. Benjamin in the middle, arms wrapped around all three. But racism didn't disappear overnight. One day, Eli came home crying. He had been called trash from the streets by another student. Benjamin didn't just hug him, he knelt down. "You are not trash," he said slowly, voice full of fire. "You are my son. You carry your mother's strength. You carry my name. And one day the whole world will know your name. For the right reasons." Eli wiped his eyes and nodded. That night, Benjamin stared out at the city lights again. The same skyline he once ruled for money now meant something more. It was no longer about business. It was about building a world where no child is called trash and where love wins, louder than hate. 5 years later, New York was glowing that evening. The sun dipped behind the skyline, casting gold light over glass towers. And inside the rooftop restaurant, where everything had once begun, Benjamin Grant sat again. But this time, he wasn't alone. He wore a gentle smile, not the tired one he had 5 years ago. His hair had more silver now, but his eyes, his once cold, lonely eyes, were filled with warmth. Beside him sat three young men, not scared little boys anymore, but strong, confident, and proud. Micah, now 15, wore a suit that almost matched Benjamin's. Aaron, 17, held a small notebook of poems he had written about his mom. And Eli, the oldest at 18, stood with a small glass of sparkling apple cider in his hand. The room was quiet as he tapped his glass gently. "Excuse me," Eli said with a shy grin. "I'd like to say something." Benjamin looked up, eyes already glistening. Eli cleared his throat. 5 years ago, we walked into this restaurant with holes in our shoes and fear in our hearts. We didn't know if he'd send us away." The guest grew still. But instead, he opened his heart. He became our dad when the world laughed at us. He stood by us when people told him we weren't good enough, when they judged us for our color, for our story. Benjamin blinked hard, trying to hold back tears. But he chose love, and that love changed everything. "Dad, thank you for choosing us when it wasn't easy." People clapped. Some stood. A few wiped their eyes. Benjamin stood slowly. His voice trembled. "I didn't save you, boys. You saved me." He looked around the room. "I had money, fame, power, but I had no soul, no purpose. That night, when you walked in, I found both." He turned to Eli, Aaron, and Micah. "You taught me how to be a father, how to fight for something real, how to love." Then he raised his glass. "To Rachel, the woman who gave the world 3 miracles. To my son, who made me human. And to love, stronger than judgment, louder than hate." A full standing ovation followed. But the story didn't end there. The next day, a video of the toast went viral. Millions watched. People who had once laughed or doubted began to reflect. Parents told their children the story. Teachers used it in classrooms. Churches, schools, and even politicians spoke of Benjamin Grant's transformation. The Rachel Carter Foundation tripled in donations. More kids from broken homes found hope. More single mothers were given jobs. More people questioned their own biases and changed. One former critic posted online, "I once judged a man for choosing 3 biracial kids over his business. Now I know. I was blind. He chose love. He chose right." And in Benjamin's home, there were now paintings of Rachel in the hallway. Family photos hung in every room. Laughter echoed through the penthouse. One night, Benjamin found a letter on his pillow. It was written by Aaron. "Dear Dad, I know you didn't get to be with us from the start, but you showed up when it mattered most. You taught us we are more than what the world calls us. You taught us to believe in love, in second chances, in ourselves. I hope one day I can be a father like you. Love." Aaron. Benjamin held the letter to his chest. tears streaming down silently. He had once sat in silence, thinking success meant being alone at the top. Now he understood. True success was family, true power was love, and true legacy was changing hearts. The world would remember him not just as a billionaire, but as a father, a man who chose three forgotten boys, who held their hands through storms and proved that the bravest love is unconditional. And it all began with three brave boys and a letter that broke him, just enough to let love in. Love doesn't see race. Real family is built on heart, not blood. A racist society can only heal when we choose kindness over judgment, truth over image, and love over fear.